Fans of a Horus Heresy, new exciting horizons, and stories moving faster than a really fast thing, thank you very much for joining me for a video. Firstly, I hope you're all well. It's been a long time since I've done a video, I feel. Been very busy with things, having operations, recovering, successfully I might add. All is well, do not worry. But yes, I hope you are all well. So, goodness me, the prophecy of Code 30 is almost fulfilled. We've had some very exciting developments over the last couple of days in the world of the Horus Heresy, with the reveals on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, depending where you are in the world, at Adepticon of 2 new miniatures, officially by the Warhammer community people, a Mark 6 Tactical Marine, and a Legion Praetor in Artificer armour. Miniatures we've sort of had a peep of from the leaks of last year, probably about a year ago now, slightly under a year ago, but here we get some proper official photos that we can appreciate, and some things in an article which talk about direction that miniatures are going in for the Heresy, and a very exciting cinematic trailer, which if you haven't watched it, you absolutely have to. I'll leave a link in the description, but I'm sure you've already seen it. Yeah, that was wonderful. And I think what we have here is just official images of the plastic box set, which has various details have been leaked about. Heta Gladius is a name that was leaked. We'll have to wait and see if that is the actual name. But more or less, things that were leaked are now starting to appear. Other exciting, fast-moving things happening this morning. Over at the Forge World website and gamesworkshop.com, a whole slew of products have gone on to last chance to buy. So these are including, and not limited to because it may change, Forge World, the Spartan, the Assault Tank, the Sicaran, the Demos Pattern Rhino, the basic Leviathan Dreadnought plus all of its weapons, and the basic Contemptor Dreadnought plus all of its weapons. So in other words, the Legion-specific versions of those two Dreadnoughts are not on last chance to buy. In addition to that, all the black books, the softcover ones this is, have gone last chance to buy. And over at gamesworkshop.com, the Heresy miniatures, the plastic sets, so Mark III, Mark IV, and the 2 sets of Cataphracti, not Cataphracti, the 1 set of Cataphracti and 1 set of Tartaros, the 2 sets of Terminator squads have also gone last chance to buy. So what's happening? Goodness me. Well, that's a lot to digest. So what I'm going to do in this video is just share a few thoughts I have around what's been revealed and what we've seen, and share a few of my thoughts about what I think's happening, and probably most specifically I want to talk about that trailer and what its thematic origins are, because depending when you came into the Heresy, you may or may not know what the origins of that trailer are in terms of the themes and the visuals of it. And as I'm going to explain, there's some really evocative themes that go right back to the very, very start of the Heresy, as it was artistically and creatively depicted by Games Workshop in years gone by. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about narrative direction and narrative tone in the Horus Heresy, to perhaps contextualize why Mark 6 is an interesting and good choice of armour for a new starter set. So I think if we can cover half of those things, we'll have had quite a good video, won't we? So let's start firstly with the 2 new miniatures, the Mark 6 Tactical Marine, good trigger discipline. I think that's quite funny, that is. As to whether or not a warrior in the 31st millennium would still need to have trigger discipline given all the sophistication of the technology, it's quite a fun thing to have, and Games Workshop models always reflect the present day in some way. Even the far future ones, they still like to reflect things that are happening today, and I think that's a nice little artistic touch. In terms of look of this model, I think it's fantastic. I love the design of the armour, great looking miniature, re-imaging of course of like the classic original plastic Space Marines, RTB-01 from 1987, obviously brought up to modern standard and quality of model. You've got a classic Umbra evolved bolt gun, he's got a combat accessory on the end of his bolter, and we can also see that there's a somewhat different stance to this miniature. So it's a more upright stance to previous Games Workshop plastic Marines, and there's a bit of reproportioning going on as well. And by that I mean I think the legs are a little longer, and it's a bit of a shift in terms of artistic style away from the style of the classic Space Marines, probably from what we might call the Jez Goodwin Mark 7 era. Size-wise, well, we haven't got this model yet, so we don't actually know how big it is. Some reasonable efforts have cropped up on the interwebs, though, doing size comparisons. And the best of these, the ones that I look at and I think are the nearest to like-for-like comparisons, they are putting this model as being smaller than a Primaris Marine, but yet a bit taller than, say, the current Mark IV plastic Space Marine. So if you think back to the videos I did on the Imperial Fist Praetors, you kind of got a bit of a view there as to the sort of sizing on these. And I think they're a little bit bigger than what we've had previously, but yet not quite so big as, say, the Primaris Marines of the current Warhammer 40,000 range. So there's some things we don't yet know about these miniatures. I mean, are they monopose or are they multipose? I have a feeling there's going to be some monoposality to them. You can see it in terms of these cool poses. They look great, but you can't then have as versatile flexibility on the model. So we'll see. We don't know that yet, but as long as there's enough decent, half-decent poses, I think that'll do the trick. In terms of the Praetor, this is a really fascinating looking model, this. Some new armour styling, a suit of artificer armour, the likes of which we've not seen before. A very Blanche-esque depiction. The moment I first saw that miniature, I instantly thought John Blanche artwork realised as a miniature. That's always a fantastic thing for anything from 40k stroke 30k artistic stable, shall we say. Interesting new style of model there, a new style of artificer armour. We've had a number of different styles of artificer armour in the Heresy range over the last 10 years. Here we have something new again. I'm interested to see if this Praetor is going to have a variety of weapon options and heads. From the trailer, I think the answer to that question is yes, but until we have it, we can't be sure. 2 miniatures, a lot to come yet, I feel, and probably a lot to come over the course of the next month. And now they've revealed them, I think we're probably 4 to 6 weeks before some of these things start getting released. And I believe Warhammer Community in one of their articles said they are going to be running articles over the month of April, so I think we're in for an exciting time if you're a fan of Heresy. So in terms of his last chance to buys, which I mentioned earlier, Spartan, Sicaro and Rhino, Basic, Leviathan and Contemptor, and the plastics, what does I think this mean? Well, in terms of the resin miniatures, they're all staples of the Legion list. Spartan, Sicaro and Rhino, and the Leviathan, Contemptor, they're very popular models. You see them in a lot of armies. Without being unduly optimistic, I think it's reasonable to say that there are plastic versions of these coming. And we've certainly seen that in terms of a Spartan. We've seen that from the leaks. The Contemptor, we've seen that from the leaks. So it's then not an unreasonable extension to say we're going to get the same for the Sicaran, Rhino and Leviathan. Interestingly, on the Sicaran tank, it's only the standard version with the twin accelerator autocannons that has gone last chance to buy. All the other more exotic weapon turrets are still available. Very interesting. There's a mystery tank as well from the cinematic trailer. Lots of people have spotted it, done a bit of speculating around it. I've speculated that this, what looks like quite a large heavy tank with a turreted main gun, is, I think it could be the Kratos heavy tank that is certainly most notably in terms of heresy literature referred to briefly in part of Book 8 Malevolence. So I'll be very interested to see if that is indeed the case. And if so, it's going to be great because the Space Marines have properly got a rounded out stable of tanks. We've got the light tank in the form of a Sabre, the medium tank, or what we might call a main battle tank, in the form of a Predator, a heavy tank in the form of a Kratos, and then the super heavy end of things is handled by the Fellblade chassis series of vehicles. So yeah, I think that's interesting as well. For the Kratos, let's assuming it is, and let's assuming it does come out as plastic kit, it'll be the first purpose-designed plastic heresy vehicle, bearing in mind that the Spartan was originally designed as a 40k vehicle. So yeah, that could make the Kratos a first for the heresy. So in general, I think last chance to buy can be a bit like yikes, stuff's going, but looking at this group, these are all kind of core key units to heresy legions. So assuming something utterly radical doesn't happen with the Legion list, I think it's an indication that there's some replacement and probably full plastic kits. And, you know, as I said, the Warhammer Community article, or one of them, alluded to the heresy is moving towards plastic. Not completely, because the range is huge, but it's moving towards. And starting with vehicles would be a great place. In terms of the existing kits, well, we'll have to see. Perhaps they're being withdrawn. So the Mark III, Mark IV, Tartaros and Cataphractite Terminators, or perhaps they're being repackaged and rebranded, obviously using the new logo that we've seen in a couple of videos, Kabanda, and now the cinematic trailer. Corporate image is everything for a big company like Games Workshop, brand image. So it would make sense for those to be repackaged. So that's my speculation as to what's happening with those. Okay then, so let's now talk about that cinematic trailer. So it's a couple of minutes long and it depicts a lot of fighting between Marines, and we see Mark 6 tactical Marines, we see a few tanks, we see a Spartan, we see some absolutely incredible depictions of Warlord Titans fighting. Amazing stuff. The animations there blew me away, so I'll make no bones about that. It really wowed me. Yeah, brilliant stuff. As well, we've got a Horus as well, which makes sense because, you know, the clue's in the title, isn't it? It's a Horus Heresy, so absolutely, why not depict him? Maybe not the very highest quality animation, but it's an advert, so yeah, I don't have massive expectations in that regard. I think it was good enough, and the real stars of a show are the Marines and the vehicles and the Titans, and by the Omnicider they deliver a good performance. It's fantastic. The next thing I'd like to just comment on is the choice of Mark 6 armour. Now, there are a whole host of reasons why Mark 6 makes a lot of sense. Firstly, apart from RTB-01 of 1988 and a few other metal models on the way, a handful of resin models, which have also gone last chance to buy actually, obviously because new plastics are coming, and the odd Marine in a tactical squad set, the Mark 6 armour has had very little creative attention since those early days of Rogue Trader. So if I was, like thinking about, what IP have I got to develop here? Well, the Mark 6s, they've not had anything done with them for a long time, so it's a great resource to rejuvenate. And the Mark 6 is a very visually arresting armour design. There's nothing else quite like it with the pointed snout helmets. And of course, we see it in the iconic Rogue Trader artwork, Warhammer 40,000 by John Sibbick, from the original Rogue Trader rulebook. So that's one thing. Well, I don't think there's one reason. To try and reduce such a complex set of factors into one particular reason is erroneous. You can't do it. There's a whole host of factors that will have led to GW choosing Mark 6. But I think, as well as like that sort of fallow period of creativity, I think the biggest drive is the original artwork of Horus Heresy. The first ever piece of Horus Heresy art, certainly in terms of turning pages of a book, is this on screen now. And this was from Realm of Chaos Slaves to Darkness from 1988. And yes, what Space Marines were in it? Mark 6s. So straight away, we've got an origin reference point there. And this was continued with Adeptus Titanicus that came out, I think it was 88. It was either late 88 or early 89, which had a lot of artwork in it, which featured Mark 6 Marines. The cover art featured it, the classic White Dwarf cover 108, that brilliant piece of John Blanche art with the two warlords. Again, you got Mark 6s in the art. Lots of illustrations throughout the Adeptus Titanicus rulebook, and then shortly after that, the game Space Marine was released, which added infantry combat and vehicles to a large degree to Adeptus Titanicus. There, Mark 6 becomes even more visually integrated as armour mark of a heresy, and there's dozens of pieces of artwork which have Mark 6 Marines in. I think that the cinematic trailer and the choice of Mark 6, their spiritual origins are Adeptus Titanicus and Space Marine from all those years ago. And that's why I think it's been chosen, along with the opportunity to do something new with a design, a concept that's not been touched for a long time. So aside from my own personal enthusiasm for getting a new set of Mark 6s, I suppose there's another thing to consider there, because the other question that then begs is, why Mark 6 for the Horus Heresy? Well, setting aside those origins of the heresy and the importance and prominence of Mark 6 then, there's been a whole host of further developments in terms of like Space Marine armour marks, which first cropped up, I think, in White Dwarf 129 from many years ago. Gosh, what was that? Was that 1990? You have to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But since then, there's been like a whole wealth of creative development around the armour marks through the ages. And the Black Book series, the Horus Heresy from Forge World, very much explored visually, artistically, because games-wise there's nothing in this, but there's a lot of story and visual art around the Space Marine armour marks. So Mark II Crusade armour, Mark III Iron armour, Mark IV Maximus armour, Mark V Heresy armour, Mark VI Corvus armour. All these, particularly the first four of those, are explored in the Heresy books. And there's a general story theme that up to Mark IV were the armours of the pre-Heresy era. Mark VI was starting to appear just before the Heresy began as it was fought, and then Mark V was a stopgap armour that appeared in the Heresy. And then towards the end of the Heresy and there onwards, the Loyalists mainly started to equip with Mark VII, and that then became the new armour type for the Imperium. I suppose there's a view there to say, well, why haven't they gone with Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV, new kit for those, or even Mark V? Well, I think the reason is there's no hard facts in the Heresy. I've read all the Black Books cover to cover, and I can't recall once where it is said that a Space Marine Legion only used a particular mark of armour at a particular time or for a period of time. Everything is always written in terms of general terms or preferences. At no point is it ever said all of the Iron Warriors fought in Mark II and nothing else. Those statements don't exist in the Heresy. You have general themes, like to say that the White Scars had a lot of Mark II because they didn't get resupplied for a long time. And let's say the Iron Hands had a preference for Mark III. But it doesn't say they only used those. So that's one kind of like narrative point that is really important to remember in the Heresy, that there are no absolutes, very few. I mean, even for Legion-specific vehicles, the rule doesn't exist because the Alpha Legion can copy any. So even there is a shade of grey. There is grey fuzziness at the edges. So I think that's important to remember. And, if you've read the Heresy books and listened to the stories as well, you'll know that before the Heresy began, Mark VI was starting to appear. And there are references to it. So there's some origin stories in Book 3, or some origin myths, let's say, in Book 3 around it. And if you listen to the novel Legion by Dan Abnett, great story. There's one moment in that where John Grammaticus reflects on the type of armour an Alpha Legionnaire is wearing. And that's very insightful as well. It's important to remember that there is no absolutes in terms of what armour was or wasn't used. And what really makes this point more strongly than anything else is to understand the narrative perspective that all of the Black Books are written from. So all the Black Books are written from the perspective of an Imperial historian, AK. And AK is writing at the end of the Heresy, and perhaps in the Great Scouring, and maybe even after that. And he's an Imperial, and he's writing based on records that were recovered, kept, and not destroyed. So he's biased. The entire Horus Heresy Black Book series is deliberately written from a biased Imperial perspective. And it's very important to understand that when considering anything written about who did and didn't use equipment at a certain time. Because ultimately, at the very least, that information is incomplete. It could be misleading information, it could be completely inaccurate information. And that is an important part of how all the Black Books are written. And as hobbyists and collectors of the Heresy, we must always remember that when building our armies and thinking about what can and cannot happen. The Heresy is a creative framework for gaming. It exists as something to enable ideas, not to cut them off. So that's a very important thematic concept to understand about how the Horus Heresy setting works and how to read anything written in any Black Book. There is no such thing as a true, hard, indisputable, irrefutable fact. Very few. Certainly in terms of like general themes with what Legion used which mark of armour. It's just not there. And if you think it's there, I suggest you go back to where you think it is, reread what you think that is, and then look for words like probably, often did, preference for, as opposed to words like only used, definitely, did not use. And you won't find them. I challenge anyone to quote me different, referring to one of those Black Books. So yes, that's why Mark VI has been chosen, and it's also why I don't think it matters from the point of view of its place in the Heresy, because there's always room to make new stories. And that then leads me to think about, well, what is the story of this upcoming box set? What is the story of Heta Gladius? We don't yet know that. So until we do, we can't comment and make judgments as to the applicability of the Mark VI armour. So that's another important thing to remember. And then finally, of course, let's all take a step back. Mark VI is one of 4 armour marks for the Heresy, arguably 5, and even arguably there were 7 involved, certainly according to the recent White Dwarf article on Armour Through the Ages. And if Mark VI is successful as a product, more will follow. We've only seen shots of a miniature for a tactical squad so far. What about the other 8 types of Legion squad that exist in the current Crusade army list? They're not going to just leave those undone, are they? There'll be models for those. Great opportunities for new armour marks. Anyway, so that's quite a long video. I hope I've not bored you. I hope you found this interesting. As always, please do share your thoughts and observations in the comments. I'll be interested to hear. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.